So what do we do? What do we do? How do we follow Jesus when this is the reality of the world that we live in? Where it's okay to be different people in different circumstances, depending on who is watching. Do we have character that is the same, regardless of who is watching? Because that's what's different. That's what's not normal in our culture. Is there anyone in here who loves math? Math people. Okay. All right, math people.
I got the problem.
This is a pretty simple math question. Maybe even some of you math people who actually, those of you who don't love math, you might know the answer to this. But can anyone tell me what an integer is? Slater, what's an integer?
I don't know.
Slater, I'm never calling on you again. What's an integer? Say it again. A number on a number line. Specifically, what kind of number? Whole number. An integer is a whole number. It is not a fraction. There is no 1.25. It is a whole number. Now, the word integer is a Latin word that in Latin means just that, whole. And it's the same word that we get the root integrity from. Integrity means wholeness. Integrity is being a whole person. We're the same person in any and all circumstances, regardless of who is watching or not. So to have integrity is to just be a consistent person, a whole person. You are not one person in one place and another person in another place. And I think that there's a few different ways that social media and technology have impacted our ability to follow Jesus as whole people, to follow Jesus as people with integrity. You see, social media and technology has made it very easy for us to lose our integrity. In a few different areas that we're going to look at tonight, but the biggest one is when it comes to sex and relationships. And you're like, oh, I don't want to hear this. But here's the thing. You see, having a mini computer in your pocket all the time has made the world smaller. It's made it easier to access. Things that you used to have to do at a computer and to find on a computer, you now have in your pocket with you, wherever you go. And so you have access to things that you shouldn't have access to easily. It's as easy to find those things as it is to find a recipe. Right? This is the world that you live in. And we can say, I don't want to talk about it, it's uncomfortable. But the reality is, this is your world. This is our world. You see, I remember the first time that a friend of mine showed me a picture of a naked girl. I was at his house for a sleepover. I was in junior high. Listen, okay, I was in junior high. This is why I'm talking about it, because I was in junior high when this happened. And we were in his house, and he said, hey, I want to show you something. And so I went over, and it was at that moment that I saw that things changed, that I was no longer innocent. It was the closest that I think I'm ever going to get to feeling how Adam and Eve felt when they took the fruit and they ate of it, where things changed. And the reality is, this moment has caused my life far more problems than I would like to admit. It has made my life more difficult. It has been a struggle that was rooted in that moment where someone else's decision to show me something changed my life. And the problem is, those things have only become easier to access since I was in junior high. You see, statistics show that the highest group, the highest range, the highest consumers of pornography are people aged 12 to 17. Why are we talking about this tonight? Because it's this group. It is this demographic where the most likely to encounter this stuff. And I will tell you, it changes the trajectory of your life if you do not decide in this moment, in this season of your life, to do something about it. You see, we're living in a culture that this is just okay. This is acceptable. It's not weird anymore. You see, this is seen as an individual act. What I look at, what I consume, is an individual act that doesn't impact other people. So why is it a big deal? It's my business. It's what I do in private. But you see, we're trying to look at something bigger. That's not going to help us as we follow Jesus, because following Jesus is a whole person act. It requires all of us. And this is what Paul is trying to get at when he is speaking to the Ephesians in Ephesians chapter 4 and 5. You see, Ephesus was a city that was immersed in sexuality, that it was immersed in this kind of way of thinking about the world. And Paul is writing to them, and he has some things to say. So we're going to start in verse 17 of chapter 4. See, Paul's instructing them, if you want to follow Jesus in a world and in a culture that does not look like Jesus, there are some things that you need to know. There are some instructions about what it looks like to follow Jesus in this kind of culture. He says this in verse 17. He says, so I tell you this, and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their thinking. You see, they're darkened in their understanding, and they're separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that's in them. And this is due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality, so as to indulge in every kind of impurity, and they're full of greed. That, however, is not the way of life you learned when you heard about Christ and were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self created to be like, put on the new self created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. You see, Paul is saying to them, there's a certain way that is normal for our culture, but that's not the way of Jesus. There's a way that they have given themselves over so that they no longer are able to think healthfully about life. They've just given themselves over to their desires so much that they don't even know what is right anymore. They just pursue the passions of their flesh. He's saying, but that's not the way of Jesus. He says that it's not going to build relationship. It's not going to help you live life. It's not going to show Jesus in the overflow of your life if you just continue to pursue life the way that the culture around you does. So just because it's normal for our culture, just because it impacts you and it's private, doesn't mean that it's not going to overflow into the rest of your life. You're a fragmented person. You are not able to fully pursue Jesus. There has to be a renewal of your mind. He goes on to say this in verse 3 of chapter 5. He says, but among you, there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. There's not to be even a hint. And we go, well, that's extreme. I mean, think about how much of what we consume falls into this category. How much of what is normal for us, that we don't even think about, falls into this category of a hint. You see, Jesus is calling us to a higher standard. And so that means that what we look at on Instagram matters. What we let our eyes linger on matters. It means what we post matters. It means that you can't just post a picture of yourself not wearing a lot of clothes and assume that people are not going to think a certain way about that. What you post matters. How you use Snapchat matters. You see, you need to understand the original intent of Snapchat was to send nude pictures to each other with no trace. It could disappear. There was no lasting damage. That's how it started. Now we're like, oh, but I love the filters. But you need to know that there's an intent rooted in these things. Snapchat has the potential for a hint or a whole lot of sexual immorality. It's just there, but it's normal to use. And you see, deciding to care about this stuff is going to be strange to our culture. It's going to be strange when a friend says, hey, I want to show you something. You say, I don't want to see that. That's going to be strange to people because they have a way of thinking. And we say, you know what? No, I believe in following Jesus because I believe that following Jesus, he's trying to root me and establish me in a life that is intended to bring joy. And it's intended to bring peace. And he has brought that. He's lived a life for me so that I could experience that. And this thing isn't going to accomplish that. And so when you say no to people, they're going to think you're weird. But we need to be honest. Okay? We need to be honest with ourselves about the boundaries that need to be set up. Because here's the thing. Most of us think, especially in your age in life, that we're invincible. That the things that happen to other people won't happen to us. So other people might get addicted based off of this stuff, but not me. I can control it. I have a handle on it. But that's not the case. That is never the case. Sin is not content to be controlled and managed. Sin is intent on destroying us. It is intent on tearing us down, causing us to be fragmented people that don't know and understand who Jesus is and the life that he's trying to offer. And so we need to understand that we need to do things that are going to help us, that are going to set up boundaries for us. You see, you need people to know what you're doing on your phones. Well, you go, no, it's my privacy. No, you need people to know exactly what's happening on your phone. You see, if you struggle with what's happening on Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter or whatever other medium, Tumblr, whatever you use to access things that are causing you to sin, you need to cut those things out. You either need to delete them altogether from your phone, or you need to unfollow the things that you know are leading you into sin. These are boundaries. And we go, I don't want boundaries. Boundaries in our culture are not a good thing. They repress our freedom. But I would argue that they're actually taking freedom. They're leading us into freedom. They're leading us into the freedom that Jesus has always wanted for us. You see, we're not going to be able to have integrity and character in these areas if we don't do anything about them. You are not going to stumble into holiness. You're not going to stumble into righteousness like, oh, how'd I end up here? It is a calculated way of living where you say, you know what? I'm not just going to hope that I'm strong enough to overcome this temptation. I'm not going to hope that in that moment I can say, I'm not going to do that this time. That's not the way it works for most people. You see, you need a boundary that's about an hour ahead of where your mind is going to be. That you're not even going to let yourself get close to that. Those are the things that are going to help you. David says this in Psalm 16. He says, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. And in this chapter, he's talking about people around him are running off and pursuing other gods. The way of the people are just pursuing things that make them happy. They're running after other gods. And David says, you know what? I put boundaries up so that that's not my story. And I found out that life is actually far more pleasant when I live my life within the boundaries that God has set up. That there's this way of living that God has always intended that's actually a good thing. But some of you don't think this is a good thing. You're listening to this and you're like, this doesn't sound like a good thing. Not being able to look at what I want to, not being able to lust after the things that I see does not sound fun. That actually sounds like the opposite of it. But we need to understand that, but what might feel good now does not mean that it won't have negative consequences later. That it won't create habits that will negatively impact your life later on down the road. You see, this isolated, this private thing is not private at all. Eventually, the hope is that, right, you get into a relationship with somebody. And I will tell you that the first time that you have to tell them about what you have seen, what you have looked at, where you've let your mind go, is going to be a terrible conversation. Especially if you are a guy, you are going to watch the person that you love be crushed. Because the expectations that you have for this person are a weight that they cannot bear. It is not an isolated choice that just impacts you. It spills out into relationships. It creates trust issues, and it is never worth it. Now you might be sitting here and say, well, this isn't a problem for me. This issue of sexuality and stuff, this is not a problem for me. But integrity goes far beyond just this area. Integrity is something that really, if we don't get a handle on it, if we let technology run its course, it has a way of robbing us of peace. That integrity, being a whole person, is important. We talked about this back at Christmas when we were kind of going through those word studies. We talked about this word peace that the Bible uses. And it's the word shalom. And it's not peace that is just the absence of conflict. It actually has a much deeper meaning than that. Peace in the biblical sense is things are exactly the way they're supposed to be. Things are running perfectly. Life is as it should be. And I think there's moments that we have, these brief moments in our lives where things are as they should be. And we get a sense of, why can't it just always be like this? Things are just perfect right now. Why can't they be like this? Maybe you're on a beach somewhere. Maybe you're with a person that just like, things are perfect. You're like, why can't it be like this? That's shalom. This wholeness, this perfectness, this living out the fullness of life that God has always intended for us. That's peace. And when we don't live into that, we can't relax. Right? You can't relax and you can't trust that God has things under control. But when we know peace, when we know shalom, it's as if, you know what, God's got this. God knows what He's doing. Things are working exactly the way they should. So I'm going to trust His plan. I'm going to trust His goodness because I have this hint of shalom. But we also know this isn't something that we can earn. Some people work their whole lives trying to earn this peace, trying to earn this shalom, and it's kind of like what we talked about in Ecclesiastes. It's kind of like hevel. Like it's there. You can almost get it. You can almost touch it. You think money might fix it. You might think the perfect relationship will fix it. You pursue it, but it's always just like you can't grasp it. It's because peace is not something that is earned. It is something that's given. God wants to give us this perfect peace and this perfect shalom, but technology has a way of robbing us of that peace. You see, we post something on social media, and once it's out there, it's like, okay, I'm just going to watch this thing. I'm going to see how many likes I get. I'm going to see how many times people double tap. I'm going to see who comments on it. I'm going to see, and I just wait, and I find out I'm not as popular as I thought. I'm not, and so I have to figure out what do I need to post that'll get a lot of likes. Okay, I'll post a picture of my baby. That'll work. People like babies, and so, or maybe it's a dog. I'll post a picture of my dog. That always gets a lot of likes, right? Josh Lee is Instagram account right there. But I always said that because he raised his hand. Anyway. But this is the thing, like it robs us of peace. We don't just put something out there and then go, okay, I don't really care what happens. We do. We care what happens. We care how people respond. We want people to like us. And it can rob us of joy. It can rob us of peace. Or, you know what? It also is an integrity issue when we choose to avoid responsibility by watching hours on end of YouTube videos. When we just let ourselves go down the rabbit hole. And we look up and it's like 3 in the morning, like, well, that got away from me. I didn't expect that. When we let ourselves get sucked into our phones so that we're not fully present with the people around us, that's an integrity issue. When we use this as a front so that people don't really get the chance to know us. When we guard ourselves by hiding behind a phone, that's an integrity issue. When we try to numb the pain in our lives by looking at things that we shouldn't look at, when we try to escape the present reality of our life, that's an integrity issue. When we shop online, hoping that the things that we find, so we spend hours looking for that perfect outfit or that perfect thing that'll fix the problems that I think I have, that'll make people like me, that will fill that void, that will cover up enough so that people will like me. That's an integrity issue. You see, none of these things actually bring shalom. They might for a moment, and that's the trap. Is it that first day that I wear that new outfit, or the time that one picture gets the response that I'm hoping for? They create these moments where I go, that's what I'm looking for. And so I go back to that well again and again. That one time it numbed the pain, but it was just for a moment. The pain eventually comes back. And Jesus is saying, you know what? I'm trying to offer you real shalom. I'm trying to offer you real peace. And so sometimes the best way to guard our integrity and to guard our peace is to actually just unplug. To remember that the world doesn't revolve around us. That there's actually far more to life than what's happening on that mini computer in our pocket. To go hang out with friends and not make it about us. To go take pictures of birds.
Let's go, baby.
Woo! To do things that get us out of this world that focuses and centers in on us. You see, when we're caught in the comparison game, a sense of peace is going to be something that we are always looking for. And it will never come. You see, it's hard to pursue Jesus with our whole heart when we're not content. And when we're not content in Him, when we're constantly looking for other things, it's so hard to pursue Jesus when pursuing a million different things at the same time. Instead, we should do what Colossians 3:15 says. We should let the peace of Christ rule in our hearts because we are called to peace. And he ends it by saying, be thankful. Like being thankful is a part to finding peace. But tonight, some of you need to take a step of bringing something into the light, bringing something that you don't want people to know into the light so that people see it. Not because that's gonna actually fix something, but you have people to walk alongside with. And you've at this point also decided, you know what, I'm going to surrender this thing to God. I'm going to say, I don't have the strength to fix this problem myself. I'm not strong enough on my own. I need the strength of Jesus in order to win this battle. Because what I want is I want wholeness. I want peace that only Jesus can bring. And so I'm going to choose to surrender it. I'm going to trust that this is what He's always wanted for me. That He wants to give me these things. This isn't something I have to earn. He's waiting for me to decide to let go of it. Some of you need to come up with a plan for how you're going to protect yourself. And you need to bring people into that. You need to say, you, and you. You are going to know what's going on in my life. I'm going to let you check my phone whenever you want. I'm going to not clear my search history. I'm going to not set myself up to hide. But I'm going to let you in. I'm going to let you know. But you need to find where those pleasant boundaries are for you. The places that are actually going to bring you peace. 1 Corinthians 10:13 is actually a really helpful verse in this. Because sometimes you get into these moments and you go, I can't do this. There's no way that this can happen. I just can't overcome this temptation. But Paul says this. He says, no temptation has overtaken you except what's common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. This is a promise that there is no reason that you have to sin. You don't. This has got to happen. No, you don't. Jesus is saying, I'm always going to provide a way out. You may not be strong enough, but I am strong enough. I will walk with you through this. He is faithful. It says he will provide a way out so that you can endure the temptation. You can get past it. You can see that this is not the way that you have to live anymore. James 4:7-8 says this. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Come near to God and he will come near to you. Some of us, your first step needs to just be resist. Resist. Don't just give in like, oh, well, there it is. No, resist. Fight it. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. You see, being people of integrity means that we are willing to submit ourselves to God. We are willing to let him have his way. We're going to let his power be the source of our strength. Because I'm not strong enough to do this. I know this from experience, and I hope that you know this too. And if you don't know it from experience, just trust me. It's not worth it. You're not strong enough, and that's okay. No one's asking you to be strong enough. We're just saying, submit to God because he is strong enough. And so we need to pray that God will give us the wisdom to set up pleasant boundaries. That he'll lead us into the places where we know, okay, this is what needs to happen. These are the places where I need to live. These are the boundaries I need to set up so that I can experience the peace and shalom. And when we're tempted, remember that Jesus gives a way out. Integrity can become a pattern of life. It can be something that we establish. A pattern that I will tell you, as a 32-year-old, I wish I had done much, much earlier in my life. That I had decided when I was your age that this is going to be the way I live my life. I'm going to set up patterns that will help me in the long run. That I won't just give in and assume, right now, I'm just going to live however I want. But I would think about the consequences that it could have someday. Because I'll tell you, it's never worth it. But Jesus wants us to establish a life that's built on character and integrity that he's trying to lead us into. Because he wants to lead us into wholeness. And he wants to lead us into life. And he wants to lead us into peace. And it always comes down to, are we going to trust that? Because if we don't trust that, we will just continue to do the things that we want to do. But we have to trust that he actually does want life for us. He does want wholeness for us. He does want peace for us. And he has always wanted that for us. Let's pray. Jesus, this is not a fun topic. It's awkward and it's uncomfortable, and so it's much easier to just ignore it altogether. But when we do, when we just ignore it, it just continues to have power over us. It continues to overwhelm us. It continues to encourage us to walk this road alone. And you encourage us to bring it into the light. To say, no, we're going to talk about this because it is something that is leading us away from life. It's something that's leading us away from you. And you want the best for us. Jesus, tonight I just pray that you would reveal to us the places where maybe we've pretended that we're strong enough, where we've pretended like it's not a problem, it's not an issue, we can just let it go. And Jesus, would we bring those things to you? Would we surrender those things to you? And would you begin to turn us into people with integrity, to people with character, who want to pursue you and want to experience life. We don't want to live these double lives, but we just want to always be pursuing you with our whole heart and our whole life. But these things get in the way. And so tonight, you're just encouraging us to bring them to you, to lay them at your feet, to bring others along into this journey, and to say, God, tonight I'm going to choose to submit myself to you. And to trust that you actually know what is best for my life. May we follow you the best of our ability in this world that is entirely focused on us and the self. Jesus, we love you. We pray all these things in your Son's name.